is fantastic, and it's a great way to get together and share ideas and learn. And there's lots that I hope you take away from this conference in general. If you're new to coaching, welcome to what is going to be one of the most rewarding experiences you've ever had. And if you're coming back for some more knowledge and you're getting back, you already know what a rewarding experience it is. I've been involved in summer swimming since 1970. I was a terrible sport. I was a very poor loser, and in 1970, my mother decided that I should learn the lesson of losing. So she put me into swimming because I wasn't a very good swimmer. And if you want to learn how to lose, take on and begin something that you're not very good at. And so I always tell the story that my very first year as a 10-year-old, I was absolutely dead last 35 times in a row. And I remember in the very last race of the year, I came second to last, and how exciting that was. And that was by 0.2 of a second. And I tell that story because for a couple of reasons. You're going to have lots of people enter your swim club that aren't particularly talented or don't appear to be talented when they start. And I think you can really be surprised that there's don't put a ceiling on swimmers. They really can, over time, how they are as a 7 and 8-year-old is not how they turn out as a 15-year-old, 18-year-old, or as a 25, 26-year-old swimmer. And the other thing is that there's more to swimming than just our time. It's about learning some life lessons, and I learned the life lessons of how to gracefully lose and become a much better sport. I started coaching out of the dive tank when I was about 13, just helping some of the junior swimmers, and I suspect that's been the experience for many of you. Something I encourage, and I encourage you as coaches to encourage your senior swimmers to give back to the sport, to coach, but it's actually a really good way for them to learn a little bit more about swimming and even learn a little bit more about their own swimming. I've coached on the island, as Lee and I were chatting back and forth. Cam River, I've coached in North Delta, and then I'd say, and then I went to UBC, swam there, and then I took about a 20-year hiatus from swimming, and then when my kids got involved, I started coaching again in Salmon Arm. Enough about me. This, I share this picture. This is, I would call my former partner in crime. This is Danny Conrad. Danny also would acknowledge that she was not a particularly great swimmer. She is one of the best coaches I have ever seen. And I have been very fortunate that I got to work with her for about 10 years in Salmon Arm and really helped develop a great program that she really developed. She was the head coach. And the reason I always talk about Danny is because I learned a lot from her. And it's a reminder that age is not, just because you're the oldest person on the deck doesn't necessarily mean that you're the most knowledgeable. And what I learned from Danny is the importance of hard work and her insistence, and I'm going to come back to this a couple of times, her insistence on perfection. She always came back. She was so persistent with swimmers and so persistent and followed up and stayed on things until they were done right in a caring way, in a supportive way. But I've always learned that lesson. I always gave stroke correction and encouraged swimmers and stuff. But I think the thing I learned from her is I learned not to let things go. And so I want to come back to that. So what I'd like you to do to get you involved in this, so this is not just a sit and get, if you can on a piece of paper, or if you feel comfortable, put it in the chat box. Can you think of one word or a short phrase that describes the person you think is the best coach you've ever had as a swimmer? Just take 30 seconds to even think about it, write it down, or put it in the chat box if you want. I'll give you a couple seconds here.
Sorry, is there a chat box?
There's a question box, I believe. Isn't there a question Q&A box?
In Whova, there's a chat box you can go into. Yeah.
Yeah, and Lee, are there some words coming up in there?
Yeah. We got empathetic, caring, disciplined, innovative, positive, reliable, motivational, inclusive, interactive, supportive.
So therefore, there is the entire presentation. If you just be all those words, I think you're good. The reason I go through that exercise, I'm going to give you some different words. Those are really important. I think empathetic, supportive, positive, or great words, and a communicator I would add in there. I'm going to add some words that we don't often associate, and it connects back to Danny a little bit. And that is words like stubborn, committed, sticking to the principles of what you believe in, caring, hardworking. I've seen lots of really knowledgeable coaches, and I've seen other coaches that have some knowledge, but they make up for it with the persistence and how hardworking they are. So I really want you to think about this as a commitment to helping your swimmers get better. All speed swimming is connected to three things: drag, power, and inertia. And I'm not going to talk much about those things. Those are really things that you should get in your skill pieces. But whenever you're coaching, you're always looking at swimmers and saying, is there a way to decrease drag? Is there a way to increase power? And of course, you're always looking for opportunities to maintain inertia. And I don't know how many times I remind swimmers that the fastest point of the entire swim of their race is the moment they push off those blocks. So I just want to, I have a handout that I'm going to be putting online that you can download later that has more information on these things. But whenever I'm looking at a swimmer and looking at their stroke and I'm trying to figure it out, I always come back to these two things. Is there an area where they can decrease drag? Is there an area where they can increase power? And are they doing things that take away from the inertia? But today, what today is really going to be about is what we call setting the environment. And so I think we should talk a little bit about philosophy. And you're not going to agree with everything I say today, and you shouldn't. What I'd really like you to do is think about some of the things I say and put them in your own context with respect to the things that you want to do, okay? So here's my philosophy, and again, this is my philosophy. You need to develop your own. First of all, I always believe in technique over meters, particularly in summer swimming. When given the choice between whether I'm going to have my swimmers work hard or do more, or if I need to slow things down in a practice, or if I need to back off in a week because technical things are slipping, I will always, 100% of the time, I choose technique over meters and over distance. That's a philosophy, and other people have different philosophies. I actually start with technique. I know lots of people believe that you start the season with some meters and some fitness pieces. I don't. I think there's a lot of research now that talks about actually working on speed very early in the season and always working on technique. So again, that's a philosophical thing. B, and I think this is really important in summer swimming. I think it's a key to recruitment. I think it's a key to having your swimmers come back. I think it's a key to having good culture on your swim club. And that is there should be fun in every practice. And particularly with your younger swimmers, you know, you need to have some fun things, whether it's a game of penguin. We always joke around, we have muscle poses on the blocks, imitation swims, whatever it is, relays, swim like a chicken, swim like a shark. You make up those fun things. And that goes to your seniors. We always try to mix warm-ups up a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit more about warm-ups later. We always try to build in some team fun activities on Fridays. We call it the team fun half hour, where it might be mats on the races on the mats or stuff like that, older and younger swimmers together. But swimming can be boring and swimming can be hard. And so you have, if you use your pool time wisely, you'll have time to get all the important things in you need to do in terms of training and coaching. But try to build in, particularly those last 5 minutes, some fun activity that when swimmers walk away, they're laughing, they've had some fun, and that's what they remember, and that they're going to come back with because they can look forward to that. One of the questions I got here online before the session started was if you could only give one piece of advice, and here it is right here. Talk to every single swimmer at least 5 times in a practice. My goal is 10. And I am always surprised how easy it is to have a practice and then you realize that you have not talked to Billy or you miss Susie. It's really important for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it's a true demonstration that you care about each of your swimmers. And fundamentally, that's really important. 2, swimmers can't improve if they don't hear from you. Just swimming back and forth and continuing to make the same mistakes, as a matter of fact, is actually going to send them backwards, because those technical errors get harder to fix. You need to get on them early. When you give somebody a direction or some feedback, for example, you want greater extension in breaststroke, or you're trying to work on the timing of the dolphin kick and fly, or whatever the feedback is, not only do you give the feedback, you got to follow up on it. And so you have to be letting them know whether they're doing it or not doing it. And here's the third thing. I hear from particularly new coaches and particularly younger coaches, one of the biggest challenges with summer swimming can be interactions with parents. And the thing that parents care about is swimming and the club, but they care about their child. And I strongly believe that nothing will improve your relationship with your parents more than them seeing you talk to their child. And often the complaints I hear from parents are about discrepancy. Billy's at the front of the line and he gets all the attention, and nobody talks to my swimmer who's at the back of the line. If you consciously talk to every swimmer 5 to 10 times every practice, any issues you have with parents is going to drop by 90%. So for those reasons, improvement shows that you care and addresses parent concerns. If you take one thing away from today, that's it. The other thing is, I've now said part of my philosophy is one of the best coaching tools is a Fitbit or something like it, or your Apple Watch. Move. Don't stand at the end of the deck. Strokes look different from different angles. Look at it from the side. Look at it from the other end. Move around. Be active. Follow your swimmer. Walk beside your swimmer as they're working on something. I'm a big fan of stopping swimmers mid-pool. If I see something wrong, I stop them right away, but move. Back to what I was saying with Danny is this persistence and this mid-pool correction. Some people like to wait till they get to the end of the pool. They don't like to interrupt swimmers in the middle. I can't stand mistakes. If I see it not being done wrong, I think it's urgent to fix it right away and to get on it right away. Again, that's a philosophical thing, but your swimmers learn pretty quick to pull to the side of the lane rope and get out of the way of the person behind you. So again, fix mistakes immediately, either in mid-pool or at the end, and don't let it go for later. If you see something, address it right away. Good habits. Good habits start immediately, and that includes dry land and stretching from day one. That includes proper touches from day one, proper push-offs from day one, proper underwaters from day one. As a matter of fact, the first thing on the first practice that I do with seniors is we practice push-offs before we even do a warm-up. Just a reminder, we're going to start off with some push-offs. We're going to do proper underwaters. Everybody knows how we're doing this again. Okay, here's the warm-up. It is a reminder for them that we want good habits ingrained at all times. If you get on that in that first week, and I know things are crazy in the first week when you're trying to organize your swimming, but if you get on that in the first week, you're going to be in for a really successful season. And swimmers very quickly understand not only what the expectations are, but how that helps them become better swimmers. Okay, how are we doing here? Any comments? Are we going too fast, too slow? We're okay? All right. Expectations of excellence. And I hear I've had lots of conversations with executives about whether we want our club to be a fun club or if we're all about results. I actually have never seen those things as incompatible. I think they're the same thing. You can have fun and be excellent. As a matter of fact, I think being excellent is fun. Your job is to help your swimmers become the best swimmers they can possibly be and do it in a way that's enjoyable. So, as I said at the very beginning, don't put ceilings on your swimmers. I always tell the story. I had a teacher come talk to me and say she was putting her young boy, Sonny, into swimming, and she said, look, he just wants to do this for enjoyment. He's not very athletic. I hear that a lot, by the way, with prospective swimmers. He's never going to be very good, but that's okay. As long as you're okay, And I know you're not going to spend much time with him, but I just want him to have some fun and get in the water. And I said, well, I'm glad he's here. Well, Sonny, by the end, had qualified. He qualified for provincials at the end of the year not because of he wasn't particularly physically talented, but everybody can get better. Everybody can get a lot better than their parents think they are. So right from the beginning, you know, that feedback, expecting swimmers to do things well. Don't judge swimmers by what they look like in May, particularly your new ones. Boy, new swimmers get good really quick. So just a reminder, you know, expect the best. Coaching, 9-to-1 ratio. 9 positives to 1 negative or 1 constructive. Your comments to swimmers should be positive in nature. That feedback should be positive in nature. That looks good. You finally got it. Way to go. Great turn. Wow, I like the way you always finish to the end. Yeah, wow, that is the best that fly has looked in a long time. Wow, that is quite an effort. All those phrases, all that positive feedback to swimmers is really important and encouraging, right? That doesn't mean that you can't get on your swimmers. Hey, what's going on with that breaststroke turn? We touch with 2 hands around here. It doesn't mean you can't do those things, but always keep in mind this. You want this to be a real positive experience and find the good things that your swimmers are doing. And you got to search for it more for the kids that are at the back of your line, right? They're the ones that need to hear that even more. The people at your front of your line tend to be your high achievers, and they can actually handle a little more criticism, right? They're usually very goal-oriented. But those kids that are new, those kids that are at the back of the line, those kids that are in the middle of your line, that are just trying to make the repeats, those are the kids that need to hear that encouragement. So remember to make sure you talk to all those kids in the line and be positive. How are we doing here? Various things to think about. I'm going to just look at that. I should probably learn to move the slides along. Various things to think about. Okay. Caring and trust. This goes to the heart. That picture is me when I was a little younger, and on the right of the screen is my daughter, and on the left is my son. And good or bad, I for a little while ended up coaching my daughter. And we were sitting around the dinner table one day, and we had some silent dinners because that's not always a good thing to coach your own children. But I asked her one time what was the most important trait in a coach. And she said trust. And I thought that was a really interesting answer, because I would have thought it was technical skill. I would have thought it was an understanding of swimming. And she said this, she said, swimming, particularly at high levels, is really hard. And you have to really commit to it. And you have to suffer, right? And she said, as long as I can trust that everything my coach is doing is to make me better, I can do more, I can suffer more, I'm willing to push myself beyond what I normally would do because I know that my coach is doing it all for me. So just remember that when you're designing your practices. And you heard me earlier say that technique over meters. I've heard coaches brag about, oh, we did, we did 8 grand today, we did 8,000 meters, and my swimmers can do 15 times 200 IM. And my question is always about, is that really about your swimmers? And is that really helping them get to where they need to be? And is that necessary, what I call a mental boredom, going to really help them with the 50 freestyle in BC Summer Swimming? So just a reminder, make sure that everything you do is really for the benefit of your swimmers to get what they want out of the swimming, okay? Trust is really important. Everything counts. I would say every moment counts. And one of the frustrations I have, and I've been really fortunate to do some mentorship coaching in the Okanagan, is coming to a practice and watching a coach write on the whiteboard for 10 minutes while kids are warming up. That's wasted time. Okay? I get you got to put the work up, but if you can in any way get it up in advance, great. Or if you need to do it while you're coaching and put up a little bit and put up a little bit, great. But warm up is important time. As a matter of fact, it's the one time when swimmers aren't trying to do other things like make an interval or maintain a pace time or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I do majority of my stroke correction in warm-up. I almost always start my swimmers with a specific skill that they're going to work on or think about during warm-up, because they got nothing else to really think about other than kind of doing some relaxed swimming and slowly building up the intensity. It's a really good opportunity if you're trying to work on head position with Stephen. Hey, Stephen, on this first part of this 400 skips warm-up, I want you to really focus on keeping your head still, eyes looking right at the bottom, right? Stuff like that. Stephen's got nothing else to think about except that. It's a really good way to set the tone for your practice. Don't write on the whiteboard. The other thing is, that is not your time to be talking to parents, and that's not time for parents to talk to you. Pool time is incredibly valuable. Every moment that your swimmer is in the water, you need to have eyes on them. Okay? No, don't ever waste that time. Off pool deck time and stuff like that, fine, but take advantage of every single moment. Yeah, and we're a swim family, by the way. You can tell that pace clock. My wife said that she wanted a nice piece of art above our fireplace, and that's now been there for 20 years. So that tells you that maybe we're a little strange when it comes to swimming. Communicator. This is a pool, by the way. How would you like to coach here? This is near Bondi Beach in Sydney. What a great place to go practice. Communication is important. I talked about talking to swimmers constantly. That includes talking to your parents before and after practice. Make it a habit after every practice of trying to seek out, particularly your new parents, seek out your new parents and say something. Hey, today, Joanne, I really think Joanne is really coming. She's finally getting her toes pointed out in breaststroke. You let her know that she's doing a good job. Hey, we've been working on Sam's turns, and I can see that he's finally getting past the flags on his underwaters. Really proud of him. That goes a long way to keeping your parents happy, goes a long way to building good relations, and it goes a long ways to how you're perceived by the executive in the swim club, quite frankly. And communication with your fellow coaches and communication with your swimmers. And while we're there, communication with your coaches is really important. I personally am a fan of what I call double coaching. We've usually, as a club, have had 2 groups in the water at a time, but we got 4 coaches. And we almost always double coach. And what I mean by that, one of us is running the practice. Often the junior coach of the 2 is running the practice. And the other coach is only responsibility is feedback and stroke correction. I think it's a great way to do, because often we spend a lot of time trying to organize the practice and keep kids on time with pace times and what I call lane management, particularly with young new swimmers. And so if you have 2 coaches or a senior swimmer that'll help kind of run your practice while you do the feedback, it's a really good way to go. Lane etiquette. Oh, I'm jumping around here a little bit. All right, lane etiquette. I've been to lots of coaches' workshops, and this almost never gets talked about, and I don't understand that. I don't think we spend nearly enough time focusing on lane etiquette. And you don't know these swimmers. This is the local winter club, the Selkirks in Salmon Arm, and the reason that this picture for me is a little humorous is because this group had some of the worst lane etiquette. They've been swimming for 5 or 6 years. And then I was fortunate enough to coach them. And we spent the first 2 weeks sorting some of those issues out. Lane etiquette is really important if you want your kids, A, to be safe, and B, to swim well. I am always amazed at amount of time that we spend on turn practice, and the amount of time we coaches get frustrated with their swimmers about poor turns. And then when I go watch that team practice, I'm watching kids all over the place on the wrong side of the lane and not doing the turn on the right spot on the tee, not angling their turns. And I'm like, well, no wonder they don't do proper turns. They're fearing for their life when they come off the wall. If you want kids to do proper turns in practice, and they should, then teach them how to do lane etiquette. Spend some time on showing them how to do an angle and come in and out of the wall properly. Show them when and how you want them to pass. Show them, make sure that they leave on time on the clock. I'm a big fan of 10 seconds apart, particularly with younger kids, so they have room. Reorder your lanes. I don't know how many times I've watched a junior practice, and the fourth swimmer is the fastest kid, and by the time they get to the wall, you got 4 kids in the same 1 meter space. It's not about social pecking order. Reorder your lanes based on how fast they are on that particular day. Oh, battery running low. Hold on here. Can't have that. All right, we should be good. Teach lane etiquette. If you teach lane etiquette, then you can also have kids do turns properly. I have seen swimmers completely turned off of backstroke because they've corked their head on somebody else. And they never, I mean, I'm talking 5, 6 years later, the 15 and 16-year-olds, they will not come off a turn properly because they're still afraid they're going to hit their head because it hurts. Okay? Teach lane etiquette. It's also important for safety. It's also important when you get to swim meets. I'm a big fan of a really structured warm-up. And if you're sharing a lane with another coach, make sure it's a safe warm-up, right? Make sure that kids feel safe. And I talked about my philosophy, and then you may not agree. Here's another one. I do not like my swimmers passing each other. And I'm sure some of you are going, well, what do you mean? I even give permission if we're doing a longer set, like a 200 or a 400, for my slower swimmer to pull right over and even stop at the wall sometimes to let somebody by. I know for some people that's sacrilege. I don't like passing because I find that kids run into each other. I find that it's really hard to focus on swimming properly and technique-wise when you're constantly looking around to see who's coming up the middle of the lane. I think if you structure your lane etiquette properly, you have proper intervals, and if you teach kids to move right over or even stop quickly at the wall to let somebody by, that you're going to have a much more successful and safe practice. Something to give some thought to. With respect to that, when we start with our brand new kids, we don't start with circle swimming. We really start with teaching them how to swim up one side of the wall, and then when they get to the wall, we have them shuffle over and come back. And of course, with new kids, 25s is a great way to start. The other thing I do philosophically in lane etiquette, we do lots of half lengths. And I find half lengths is a great way to teach, particularly juniors, if one side of your pool is shallow, to go up one side, stop, stand up, and walk over and come back. It's a really good way to teach kids how a circle swim works because you're standing right there. You don't have a large area to cover. You can cover it in 10 meters. And the last thing I'm going to throw in there about half lengths is it's really, I'm a big fan of half length swimming for juniors because they can maintain their focus and their thoughts about what they're supposed to be doing. And when they pop up after 10, 12 meters, you're standing right there and you give them instant feedback. And so we constantly run, you swim 12 meters, you stop, I give you feedback. Sometimes my feedback is just a thumbs up, or I pull the swimmer right out of the water because I want to have a conversation, or I show them a video. And if I give them a thumbs up, they know to go to the other side, they swim back and they're ready for their turn to circle again. I not just do it with juniors, I constantly do it with seniors, particularly around butterfly, because I find even seniors don't really focus or do butterfly properly sometimes for more than 12, 15 meters, and they get real sloppy real quick. And we use it as a quick reminder to get our technique back and how we really want the rest of the set to go. So this feels weird, I got to say, just talking to a screen. So I'm hoping that when we get to some questions, that it'll be a little more interactive. The other thing is, particularly with juniors, just so you know, I often carry a noodle. Back to the safety and lane etiquette. I really don't want kids to hit their heads on the wall, and I really do want kids to learn to count their strokes from the flags and know their stroke count. And it's a lot easier, particularly I get a senior swimmer to help if they know that there's somebody there that if they're going to crank their head, that I put my hand down or put the noodle down so that they don't hit their head. Little things like that go a long way. I'm a really big insister that you swim hard to the wall, that you swim full speed into your turns. But back to that trust word, my swimmers know that I'm going to make sure they don't have collisions in the pool. They know that if they're about to hit their head, that a noodle's going to be there or my hand's going to be there, or a kickboard's going to be there. They know that if at all possible, I'm going to make sure they're safe. And so with that trust in mind, they're more prepared to go for it on turns and stuff. It'll make a big difference. And the other thing is, if there's going to be a collision, and it does happen in pool, pretty much I wake up the entire city by screaming, stop. And all my swimmers know when I say stop, you stop. Because again, I don't want any mid-pool collisions. That only happens, I would say, once or twice in an entire summer, because we really spend time teaching kids. Okay, that's lane etiquette. Couple other over here. Parents. I talked earlier, parents have a really important role in summer swimming. Boy, oh boy, what a volunteer organization. The amount of time and effort that parents put into BC summer swimming is admirable, with respect to fundraising, with respect to driving their kids back and forth to the pool, with respect to running swim meets. I mean, it really is admirable, and it needs to be respected. We also need to set boundaries with parents. You heard me talk earlier about the importance of your time on the pool. That is swimmer time. And I have never allowed parents on the deck. I've had good relations with parents. I've had the occasional parent, like many of you will, but the pool time is swimmer's time. And if you explain it that way, look, my entire focus during a practice is on your child and all my swimmers. Now, I'm not going to have conversations about fundraising. I'm not going to have conversations about what events Billy should be swimming this weekend. I'm happy, and I mean this, happy to have those conversations after my swimmers are out of the water. I'm happy to get together with you before practice and talk about those things. And I'm happy to talk to you either by text or phone or whatever, email, whatever's working for us, but not when I'm on the pool deck. And for the most part, I really have not had issues with that. It's important to get your executive on board with that, and your president and your coach's liaison can be really helpful with that. Come to that understanding with your executive. I think that's a really important thing about setting the tone for your swimmers, that they're the most important thing. It's pretty hard to argue with that. Make sure that you're not using it as a way not to communicate with parents. Make sure that you're using it as a way to focus on your swimmers, and that you explain and demonstrate that you will communicate with parents after practices. And as I said before, those 10 minutes after practice, connecting with parents is really valuable. But again, the most important thing when it comes to parents is paying attention to their child. Okay? The other thing when you talk to parents, be specific. They may not be swimming people, they may not have a background. Some of them will. There'll be a number that will. It'll surprise you. But if you can give real specific things that you're working on with their child, that goes a long ways. Okay? New swimmers, new coaches. One of the challenges you will have is the formation of groups. And I know there is tension, and it's one of the things you need to work with your executive on. I have always been a huge advocate, and I have had some conflict with parents, I'll be quite frank, and even with my executive from time to time. But I believe that groups should be primarily, not exclusively, but primarily based on ability. This to me goes back to safety. This to me goes back to excellence. And I understand that having a 14-year-old swim with a 9-year-old is not always ideal. But if I can get that 14-year-old swimming at the right level and the right ability, very likely they're going to move up groups pretty quick. You do have to keep a little bit of an eye on social groups, and that is important, and it is more of an art than a science. But I've always believed you should start with ability. Again, you don't have to agree with what I think, but you have to think about this as a philosophy, and you need to work this out with your executive before you start. And the other thing is, as an example, say you have 40 swimmers and you got 4 groups, and you're going to have 10 in each group. Think at the beginning of the season of overloading your lower groups, for lack of a better term, like say 12, 12, 8 and 8 or something like that. It's always easier to move kids up than it is to move kids down. And if you start off 10, 10, 10, 10, and you start to move kids up, suddenly by the end of the year, you have one group of 20 and a group of 5. So just give some thought about where you see kids might flow throughout the season. And it also makes your conversations with parents easier. If their 14-year-old is swimming with a 9-year-old, but there's an opportunity as improvement starts to happen that they can move up. Okay? keeping on with my controversial statements. Experienced coaches should coach juniors and young swimmers. I've been in this business now, I don't know, I said from 1970, so that's a long time. Been coaching for over 40 years, but certainly on deck for 30 of those 40. I always coach new swimmers. I coach seniors, I coach all the groups, but I always have a substantial part of the groups or kids that I'm responsible for as juniors. Danny, who I talked about before, who was former BCSSA Coach of the Year, always coached juniors. She was a head coach. And I know that there is a, not necessarily a stigma, but a ranking sometimes, you know, that the more experienced coach or the coach that's been around for the longest gets to coach the seniors or the kids that are going to provincials. If you want to have a really healthy and strong club, I really think that your experienced coaches need to spend considerable time with your development program and your junior coaches and your junior swimmers and your younger coaches. And again, I go back to this double coaching model. If you can do that, to have an experienced coach with a new coach with young swimmers is really great for everybody. So just give that some thought. Again, whenever possible, you need to create a good coach to swimmer ratio. And that, I mean, I get that's based on the number of coaches and swimmers you have, but there's often times when you're not coaching or you're not assigned to a group. And if that's the case, go on deck, go back on deck, even if it's not your group or your time, and work together as a staff. I find that the double coaching is good for safety. It's good for stragglers. It allows you to stick with one swimmer. That's another big advantage of that, is sometimes you just need to stay on something with one swimmer and it's at the expense of everybody else. You can do that if there's two of you coaching. You can work with 5 or 10 minutes. You can pull a swimmer out and take them over to the dive tank or the shallow end or the kiddie pool or whatever you've got at your facility to work on a specific skill and then bring them back. So again, just take a look at trying to do that when you can. Things are going faster. Tools of the trade. iPad, colored pens. Why would that be important? I take my iPad every practice. I think it is one of the huge advancements in coaching. Swimmers cannot feel or see what they're doing incorrectly. They can be wiggling their hips all the way up in freestyle and they have no idea they're doing. They can't feel it. But if you can show them on an iPad, right? I must get at least 10 swimmers out of every practice and show them a quick video clip. And almost always you hear the words, oh, I look like that? What do I need to do to fix that? And then you show them their progression as they get back in and they start to work on fixing that. Get them out again, show them if it's still the same or if it's improving. That immediate visual feedback is huge for changing technical performance, okay? Like, use your phone, whatever you have, use it. It is an unbelievably great tool. Colored pens. My swimmers know very quickly that black on the board when I write a workout means normal sort of pacing. They know that red means fast. And I'm going to show you some examples here in a second of how I write up a workout. It's a very clear visual signal. When they see red on the board, they know that that's an all-out effort. And there's not necessarily a lot of them in my practices, but when it's red, it means it's everything. And then often I use blue as special little comments or focuses. So my swimmers know to look for those cues on the board, okay? Highlight pens, workout design. I promise you I'll give you a workout. Here's a typical workout. And just so you know, the picture on the left is a famous workout. I have my swimmers name some of our sets. And the tough set here is it's called, what do they call it? A Circle of Fire. They didn't particularly enjoy this one. Anyhow, this is a typical, you'll see in the black is typically 100 free, 100 kick choice, 100 one arm, or 100 IM with one arm fly. I usually do warm-ups with one arm fly, not double arm fly. I've written in blue some things I want them to know or think about. That warm-up is to activate their body and energy and their brain. I think on this day we were doing some things with music. Then you'll see 2 times 50 IM, a normal IM, and then the second one in blue, something different for them, is foot first. I do lots of foot first swimming, particularly for warm-up, just to give the kids some kinesthetic feel, something different. And again, that's a fun element. I'm not going to go through all the warm-up. Pardon me?
Would you be able to move your cursor, because I've got a pop-up over bottom part of that screen. Just move it. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
All right. You'll see again, partway down on the left, 8 times 25 free. That's part of the warm-up. I'm actually a big fan of 8 times 25 IMs are free for warm-ups. And you'll see in brackets, I put the effort level. We're increasing the effort level as we activate. And I put a note. I want the underwaters to the blue line, and the pool I work on, that's halfway. So we're actually doing quite a bit of focus on underwater there. Okay. Go down to the next set, 2 times 25 free on 35. Not that particularly hard, but look at the comment. I want it perfect, meaning this is not about speed, it's about technically perfect. This is a standard thing. We do a drill, and then I do a lot of drill swim. Again, you'll see no speed work, right? This is not a hard practice. And then 25 drill, 25 perfect free, a 15-meter burst, and you can see that's in red. I want that fast, 10 easy. So that's a 75. Okay, that's a way more, to me, interesting practice or interesting set for 75s to swim it that way than just to swim straight 75s. And what am I getting? I'm going to talk a little bit about this, because what am I getting out of this? I'm getting a drill focus. I'm getting a technical focus on the 25 perfect free, where they're working on the skill they did in the drill. I'm then getting some speed work for 15 meters and then 10 easy. Okay, I'm getting a lot of things done. If I put 475s on the board, I'm going to get 475s swum at 85% effort. I'm not sure what I'm getting out of that, because when my kids go to race, I don't want them, there's no need for them to swim at 85%. No part of that race is going to be 85%. I'm probably not getting much technical piece. And I find that boring. So just something, I try to break up my sets in different ways. Okay, very quickly, the tough set, this was the piece. You can see how it's broken down. If you do that set, again, you look at it on the board, you go, that's not particularly hard. Well, you might want to write that one down, because if you get in and do it, I guarantee you by the end, you're like, okay, that's a hard set. Again, it's not your standard 10 200s or 15 100s or 20 50s, right? But to me, this is a summer swimming set, because it's got speed built in, and summer swimming is about speed and technical expertise. Okay. And again, back to what I said before, a really huge fan of the pen color changes, just so swimmers understand that the colors indicate that you want them to swim differently. Okay. I think that's just the same set, but a little bit bigger. Yeah. Okay. I'm a big fan of hard, not boring. I also coach masters, and my master swimmers said this comment to me one time. Every time when you coach us, I come in, I look at the board, and I go, that's not hard. This is going to be an easy practice. And halfway through the practice, they're like, I'm dying. Okay. And I also, speed kills in swimming. I get, personally, I'm training for some triathlons and Ironman. I can get in and swim 15 200s. But you get in and ask me to do 4 100s freestyle all out, that hurts. That's way harder, in my opinion. So give that some thought. Try to design your sets and your practices, set them up in a way that they're more interesting. They're hard and challenging, and I mean mentally challenging. They may look easy, but to actually swim them is really physically and mentally challenging for your swimmers. No, what are we doing here? Hold on. Okay, and I also want to come back to this. Focusing is harder than swimming hard or lots. All right. If you can get your swimmers to focus on the important things and be thinking in a practice, boy, develop thinking swimmers. Again, it goes back. One of the reasons I mix up those practices and I write them differently and I have them in colors is I want my swimmers mentally engaged. And again, it's why I'm not a fan of sets like 15 200s free or 15 times 200. I'm just not. Because my swimmers just aren't engaged and they get sloppy. And why wouldn't you? I do if I do that set. You can design the same kind of set with the same kind of outcomes, but switch it up, make it interesting, and get it so that they're focused on specific things. And if they're not focused, give them something to focus on. Okay. And I'm going to give you an example here. I know we're getting close here. 20 times 50 free on 60, pretty standard set. What's the goal? Okay, what's the goal of 20 times 50 free on 60? I would guarantee that if you do that set, you're going to get kids swimming them. Let's say they're kids that can go hold 40s, let's say. You're going to get kids that are go 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 43, 42, 43, 42. And it's going to be the same thing. And I'm not sure that they're developing anything. And it's boring. What about the exact same set written out this way? Okay, I'm changing the pace times. They got to think a little bit. I'm breaking it up into groups of 4. I suspect instead of 42, 42, 42, I might get 42, 42, 41, 40. Right? I'm going to suspect when they go down to 50 that suddenly their aerobic is going to be stressed, right? And they're going to be trying to hold their times and just make it. I'm going to get a little more fitness out of that set. I'm going to get a little more speed out of that set. What about this? What did I give them a clear direction that I want them to do the set 4 times through or 5 times through and descend at 1 to 4? The first one is just smooth and technical, and the fourth one is all out. Okay, now I'm doing some different things. What about this? And what about if I give it extra 10 seconds before the last rep of each one or the last set? I'm probably going to get more speed. What I'm saying is swimming's hard work, okay? Look at your sets and say, can I design this in a way that I get a little more out of my swimmers, a little more focus and a little more speed? Okay, what about? Couple more minutes here and then we should go to questions, right? Workouts, warm up. Again, I said earlier, right? I went to I was doing some mentor coaching and I went to actually I was subbing for a coach and I said, oh, they said, do you want to write your own workout or you want me to do it? I said, I'll write my own. They said, well, that's fine, but just so you know, the warm up is always exactly the same. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, well, no, my kids know what the warm up is. I said, no, I if you want me to cover for you, I'm not going to go coach and give kids the exact same warm up they've had for 6 weeks in a row. How boring is that? I'm sorry, like, I always think about how I'd feel about that as a swimmer. To me, that doesn't feel like you care very much. Sure, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I'd rather get in and have to think about something or try something different. Variety is important, okay? I do lots of drill sets. Oops. No, we're losing it here, aren't we? Cooper's losing it. He's probably thinking he's already lost. Okay, sorry, guys. Lots of drill sets. I do what we call Logan sets. It's named after a swimmer here, which is, you saw it on the board there, which is a drill, swim with the drill incorporated. So if you're working on something in the drill, incorporate it into swim, fast swimming, and then easy swimming. And then lots of variety. Okay. Don't think we have time for that, although something fun, social 50. Social 50 is where swimmers get to swim a 50 and talk and visit. If you see in the picture on the bottom, that's what we call a high five 50. They got to swim with a partner and do high fives. It doesn't matter what you do, just mix it up and have a little fun. And it's 2 minutes. And if I've got a really hard 2-hour practice or an hour and a half practice design, I always throw a quick fun 50 in the middle. Okay. And oh boy, I'm having a little trouble here, aren't I? I want to go to, talked about the first 10 minutes. I'm not going to talk about the first swim meet. And what's this one? Oh, workout ideas. So just back sort of with the theme of keeping it interesting. That's a big red binder I have. In it, it has over 1,000 different warm-ups, or not warm-ups, workouts. I keep the book, and the gray there you'll see is a picture I've taken of a board. I do that for a bunch of reasons. I take a picture of all my workouts so I have a record of them. And in the bottom right, you'll see the initials. Those are the initials of the swimmers that were in that workout. I only had 4 kids that day. But I do that so it's also a backup for attendance. And it's also a nice way if you're doing some time swims and you write the times on the board that you have them. But the reason I have it is we all get in ruts as coaches where we keep doing the same practice over and over again. And every week when I'm planning my week, I flip through and try to pull some different workouts out so I keep some variety in it. Okay, I think I should stop my monologue there and see if we have some questions. Would that be a good time?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Perfect. Hello.
Look at that.
So any questions at all? Just unmute and go ahead, go ask away.
So my name's Caitlin, and I was wondering if you guys have any like fun COVID like friendly games afterwards, other than just regular games.
Go faster, go more.
Did we lose Carl?
I think we lost Carl.
I think we lost Carl. Oh, he's back.
Oh, there he
He's
is.
muted,
I went to check the Q&A and I went the wrong way.
though. Ask that question again.
So I was wondering about like some games that are like COVID friendly afterwards.
Oh, sure. We start with the hard questions. Some games that are COVID friendly. Well, I guess any games that are spread out. The first one that comes to mind is follow the leader. So we'll play follow the leader and switch up the leader, by the way, but they got to move through the pool and try out different equipment and go off the diving board and under ropes and all that kind of stuff. But they can do that spaced. That's the first one that comes to mind. We also, a fun one I like to do with little kids is they get on the block and they do a muscle pose or a fancy pose and jump in the water, and they just go one at a turn. I make stuff up.
Normally I do too, but yeah.
And then swim like a shark with a fin. They like to sometimes, if you have some swimmers who have a unique kind of looking stroke. We used to have a swimmer called Davis Woolley in our club who had a very high, he'd come way out of the water. So the little kids used to love to swim Davis breaststroke, and they'd all imitate him. That's good fun.
Maybe
Okay,
we could
thank
start a board in the community board where people can share their ideas for COVID-friendly activities.
That would be a good idea.
I'll take that upon myself.
How should you keep juniors who don't particularly want to be there motivated to swim and do the practice? Yeah, but depends. Well, first of all, it depends why they don't want to be there. That's hard because they really want to be there. Then I think you have to have the question, why are they there? I always come back to is talk to your kids, pay attention to them, ask them what they're looking for. Some kids say they don't want to be there because they're not about racing or they don't want to swim fast, and they're really there for social reasons. Well, nothing wrong with that. I actually think you can do both. But I communicate and I ask my kids all the time what they're interested in, what they want to do. Try to find out what their favorite stroke is. Give them an opportunity to do their favorite stroke, right? All kids don't have to do the same stroke at the same time, stuff like that. Have them do part of the warm-up. Have them write up part of the warm-up. What's your favorite thing to do in a warm-up, right? Let's do that. Stuff like that.
Izzy Rich.
Is there a way to tell parents that their kid really doesn't like swimming? Because I have a swimmer who has said to me that he hates swimming. Like, is there any nice way to break it to the parents?
Well, communication's always an art. I think, yeah, first of all, do it privately. I would probably talk to the swimmer first and say, if you're really not enjoying this, are you okay if I talk with your parent? Because sometimes they don't want their parent to know. So I would get my swimmer's permission first. Are you okay if I talk to your parent about this? And what is it that you don't like? And then I would just sit down with the parent side by side, by the way, rather than face to face. Side by side is a really good way to communicate things that might not be comfortable. And just say, I've been talking to Johnny and I'm really happy Johnny's here, but Johnny says, or Johnny's, not necessarily enjoying this as much as he can. So maybe you and I can work together to find things that Johnny likes, or let's talk to Johnny, or can you find out from Johnny as a parent what he likes or doesn't like about swimming? I would do it that way. I would do it gently. And I would do it with an invitation. You want Johnny to be there. It sounds like the parent wants Johnny to be there. The problem is Johnny doesn't want to be there. But you're not going to get very far without involving Johnny. But I always ask permission before I talk to a parent. Like if a swimmer discloses something like that, I always ask their permission first. What is the best way to introduce skills like dives or flip turns to young swimmers? Oh, sure. I'm a fan of progressions with dives. I've done the sitting on the deck and falling in, start from their rear. I've done the from a one knee, one thing. right? I've done that. I'm not a fan of starting young swimmers off the blocks. I think that's pretty scary when you're that little. So, right, I start with the sitting. I progress to knees, one knee. I do dives off the side of the pool deck for a long time. I then actually move to jumps off the block, so they just get comfortable with the height. I don't really introduce diving off the blocks for quite a while, probably not till the end of the summer with some of our brand new younger 6 and 7 year olds. As for flip turns and stuff like that, I start them off stationary. We start off with the usual somersaults in the water. I get in the water quite often when we teach flip turns. I do demonstrations with seniors, but I get in the water. I have them do it from stationary somersaults. I have them doing it without the wall first. Otherwise, they get complicated and they're trying to do the wall. That's really, a flip turn's a really complex skill. So I break it down and we just start on the somersault part first. I probably don't get to pushing off the wall until.
Yeah, you can take the one that's in there.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'll plug it later.
Oh. Okay. Anything else? Oh. How do you discipline kids who don't listen, splash around, talk to their friends the whole time? So I'm going to be honest, I don't get a lot of that. It does happen. So I'm going to come back to is I start with, is it me? And what I mean by that is my practice interesting? I find that happens in two cases usually. If my practices are boring, and B, if I got way too much wait time on the end. So my question would be, if you have 15 kids sitting at the end of your pool where you give a 5-minute explanation, you ain't going to make it. You're going to have problems. Very seldom do I have more than 2 or 3 kids at the end, right? I design my workouts so they're constantly moving and they're on to the next set. And I'm happy to explain the set multiple times. I'm not a big fan of keeping all my kids at that little end, particularly in COVID times, but at any time, and having long explanations. The other thing is, if I do have to give a long explanation, I get them out of the water. I will pull my kids out if I have to talk more than 30 seconds or a minute, because if I get them out of the water, it's way different and it takes away some of that wanting to splash each other and all that kind of stuff. But I would design my workouts, I would move along quickly. If I really have any issues, I pull the swimmer out and I have a conversation. One-on-one, I try and do it in a way I get down on one knee so it's eye to eye. I'm not glaring down at them. I don't yell at them. I get down one knee. And I usually start with, what's going on here? Right? It's a question. Okay? That's my feedback there.
I see 2 more questions down in the chat box. We're right at 2 o'clock, so we're supposed to be moving on, but I figure we'll do these 2 and we'll call it there. And if anyone else has any more questions, we can keep going. We'll do the 2 questions and I'll explain the rest.
Do 2 more questions?
Yeah.
Why would you settle having, say, a 14-year-old swim wise with 8-year-olds? We should have a group for those teenagers that swim with it. Yeah. What I was thinking of a specific swimmer. That's a great question and a good point, Dawn. Lots of clubs are small, I've seen lots of situations where you have 1 or 2 kids that are brand new to swimming as a 14 and 15-year-old, there is no other group. I always, in that case, have a conversation with that swimmer and say, look, you're brand new, and if I put you in with my 14-year-olds who are doing 2,500 meters in an hour easy, you can't do that. You're unable to do that. And I know that's where your friends are. Give me 2 weeks in this group with younger swimmers. Give me 2 weeks with that where we really teach you some of the basic skills. And then we're going to try in a practice with your friends. And we're going to have you back with some more basic skills. And we're going to try in another practice. Had lots of success getting kids to the group with their peers. But it's just having to teach them those skills. Some of those kids can't even do a turn. And so to put them in with their peers is just discouraging. So if you had a group of 6 of them, that'd be fantastic. Form a group of 6 14-year-olds that are new. But we often, because we're smaller, only have 1 or 2 kids like that. So you always do it with caring. You do it in a progressive way. You always do it in conversation with the swimmer. Dawn, did that help?
Yes, because I'm so used to within Swim Canada, that's what they're providing versus Swim US of A. We have those programs, those groups within our program. So it was a shock when we don't have it here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of this number. But again, it goes back to the respect, right? And both situations aren't great. right? To have the 14-year-old in, and trying to keep up with peers who are, they're doing a 50 and the other kid's doing 150. That's just no fun either. But I do lots of conversation with the swimmer. I don't usually have challenges with the swimmer. They sort of get it. It's often the parent that has trouble understanding that. Yeah. Do you have an opinion about how often fins should be used with developing swimmers, and when is the best time for fins to be used? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of fins with new swimmers, other than for fun. Maybe a little bit when working with dolphin kick, but I bet you in a summer, say 100 practices, the fins would probably come out twice for new kids. I don't think that's the way to go. I think we have to use all that valuable time on skill development. And I think at that point early on with new kids, fins are actually sometimes compensating for bad habits. I use fins a lot with my seniors and older kids. There's lots of reasons to do that, but not when I'm teaching new kids. Again, that's my philosophy. Dawn's giving me a look. Right? And that's just the way there you go. That's just the way I believe, right? And what I would say is if you believe in fins, just make sure that it's giving the technical piece that you want it to give, and then it's supporting what you want kids to do. Okay? Is that it, Lee?
Yeah, I think that's all the time we have. I'm just checking in with our guest speakers here and making sure the next ones are lined up. I'm not sure where Brandon DeCosta is, if he was able to get in or not. So we're going to stay in this room with Baylee for breaststroke. If Brandon does end up showing up and, he might have internet issues or something, or we'll keep in touch with Penny. But otherwise, really want to thank you, Carl. That was super awesome.
Pleasure.
I know I took a lot from this. I do every year. I probably have about a page worth of notes again. So
good.
Just to jump in, that I'm waiting to. I've got the other room open and I'm keeping an eye on it. And I'm just going to let those people know to head on over to this session in the meantime. But thank you, Carol. Sorry I jumped in on the conclusion there.
Oh, is that Penny?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
it was.
thanks. You're welcome. And have a great summer, everybody, and all the best with the coaching and with your swimmers.
Yeah, and we'll be in touch, Carl, for sure. I have many questions for you, as always. So.
Okay, awesome.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, next up, we're all going to stay here. We have a good old dear friend of mine coming up, and he's going to talk to us about breaststroke. We have Baylee Munro speaking here, and he is probably a masterclass breaststroke expert. I've never seen a brain think like this. He was formerly my head coach, and he's a dear friend of mine too. He's currently assistant head coach of the Nanaimo Riptides, and he just got accepted into a postgraduate program for coaching, I believe. But he can probably touch up a little bit more on all that stuff and make sure it's all there. But really excited to hear from you, Baylee, on breaststroke as always. And yeah, I'll let you take it over from here.
Wonderful, Lee. Well, thank you so much for the warm introduction. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everyone. I believe the last time I was kind of a part of an event like this was almost a year ago when we were doing the COVID meetings on here, and I did a talk on breaststroke then previously. And what I'm going to talk about today is going to be a little bit different from even that talk. I think it's important that your philosophy and kind of your ideas surrounding each stroke are forever evolving, and that you're constantly thinking of new things and experimenting and trying out new things. And that's going to be what facilitates your personal growth. So can everybody see my screen, first of all?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, I want to make sure I can see the gallery because I don't want to see it like just staring at a screen the whole time. All right, so let's talk about coaching breaststroke. So before I begin, I want to just do a quick land acknowledgement. I'd like to respect and acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Coast Salish and Snooneymoot nations on which I live, learn, and work from during this conference today. So table of contents, basically how we're going to break this down. There's kind of 6 key sections. So I'm going to go briefly into a little bit about me. You're not going to learn my life story, but I think it's important to learn a little bit about anybody that you're kind of listening from, because with where they've come from, it's going to have some biases and some areas that you can tell that they learned from, or some things that basically informed their views on whatever they're going to be talking about. So it's important to know where someone came from. One of my friends, Ian Maddock, that coaches in Victoria, he seemed like a really interesting guy in terms of coaching. He studied economics in university. So to kind of pick Ian's brain, I had to watch Crash Course, about 30 videos on economics. So then we could have conversations about something and kind of share some common ideas. So it's important to kind of have an idea of the biases of the person and experiences of the person you're talking about. I'm going to be talking about some summer swimming specifics to breaststroke, not just from a technical side, but kind of some of those biases that I've just mentioned and how you can use them to basically be as successful as you can be in the environment that you're presented with. After that, we're going to speak more generally about breaststroke technique at a developmental level, so kind of solid stroke fundamentals, as we would call it, that are applicable to pretty much everybody, breaking that down into 4 key areas of the body position, broadly, the lower body, the upper body, and then putting it together. Then we're going to look at advanced technique, which is going to be more relevant for senior level swimmers and swimmers that are going to begin individualizing things as they kind of look to hit some real performance goals. After that, in summer swimming, we've only got a couple breaststroke races. It's not like winter where you have the 200. So it's a little narrower, but there's still some important race strategy, and more specifically, how you can train to perfect that race strategy and really, really execute on it. So I'm a bit of a fast talker naturally. So now that I've just realized I've ripped through 500 words in 30 seconds, I'm going to take a deep breath, and then we'll be at a more appropriate pace for the end of this. So what we've got here, just as a quick little photo, is we've got 2 of basically the best breaststrokers in the world. We've got Lily King on top and Adam Peaty at the bottom. Adam just had a great 100 breaststroke at basically the British trials, where he went 57 long course in prelims and then 57 even faster in the finals. The world record stands at 56.8. I'm hoping to see that go down this summer. So a little bit about me and just kind of about my history within the sport and my experience, and the things that are going to you kind of keep in the back of your mind is, oh, well, this guy swam here and he did this sort of thing, just so you have a sense of where I'm coming from. Not to say that any of my experiences make what I'm about to say more valid than anyone else's, but just that you can kind of have a sense of, oh, he swam at this school, his coaches probably said this sort of thing. So a little bit about me. I've got my photo up there from summer swimming. I believe that was my first year as head coach in 2018. The girl on the right. So now okay, let's just go through the timeline. So first of all, I was a swimmer. I wasn't very good at other sports. I played soccer, I played hockey, I played 1 game of baseball, and I left crying, okay? And then I found swimming, and I was decent enough at it. I mean, I made provincials my first year. The next year, I medaled at provincials, and soon enough, I was making nationals, and eventually my kind of top competitive result at that point was qualifying 4th for finals at age group nationals, which is basically nationals, but for each individual div or age group, let's say. So that was my experience as a club swimmer, swimming for the Nanaimo Riptide swim team, which is where I now am the assistant head coach. After the conclusion of my high school and age group career, I moved on to the University of Victoria, where I studied computer science. I did a minor in business, and I swam for all 5 years. My university swimming career, I didn't really go crazy and take off super well, like I think everyone hopes to when they take everything to the next level. I had some decent results. I mean, my personal best time in 50 breaststroke was a 29.8 flat start, 29.3 on a relay, 24.1 50 freestyle, and 23.6 on a relay for 50 freestyle. So those aren't insanely fast times in the big picture when you've got 4 other guys on the team going 28 for 50 breaststroke. But I feel like it's a decent enough level that basically I was at all the swim meets, but I wasn't making the finals. So I was spending a lot of time listening to coaches of the kids that did make it in the finals. What I would kind of do is, and there were a lot of sessions where I was not swimming in finals, I would kind of have my phone out here and I'd have my notes app open, and I would sit behind people like Steve Price at UBC or Derek Schoof at University of Alberta. And I would just kind of listen to the interactions that they were having with their swimmers, and kind of write down some things that I liked or didn't like, or things that I thought would be useful, or approaches that I thought would be nice. So even if you're not in the finals, there's something you can learn about, and especially by watching the race that you were supposed to be in. I think it gives you a bit of an emotional component that ensures that you're more likely to be receptive to something. You're less likely to just kind of watch it. You're more likely to kind of take everything in if you can. In my summers, when I was at home from University of Victoria, I was coaching the Nanaimo White Rapids Swim Club, the summer club. I started off as a junior coach recruited by Gareth Saunders, who is doing a presentation at this conference as well. And Gareth actually now coaches at the Riptides as an assistant 3 times a week. So I started off as a junior coach, which means I was assisting on a group with Gareth. Next year, I kind of took the steering wheel of the bus, and I was a senior coach coaching the senior group, then assistant head coach, same thing, coaching the senior group, and head coach. That's kind of where I stayed. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with the same group of athletes over the course of 5 years. So grade 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which I don't think is necessarily something that gets to happen a lot in summer swimming. And there's a lot of development that can take place over that period of time. It's not necessarily just the 16 weeks that you have in the season, but then you do that 5 times, and you can have a pretty strong group of swimmers by grade 12. Some of them, even though they weren't medaling at provincials individually throughout their career, by the time they're hitting grade 12, they're getting their first medals and they feel like they really ended off on a high note. So it's nice to have that development. After I finished up with school and I finished up with White Rapids, I transitioned immediately into the assistant head coach role of the Nanaimo Riptides. And my job essentially was that they had identified kind of a gap of kids in the middle of the program, and that the senior level was doing pretty well, developmentally was pretty good, but they needed to kind of patch this big hole of 10 to 12 aged kids. And previously, even though I was coaching the senior group at the summer club, I had also coached these little girls that you can kind of see right here for 2-3 years. So I had some experience in that area. And that girl on the right is actually one of my best swimmers now at the winter club. So it's nice to be able to work with kids over the long term and keep working with them, because I think that's where, if you're a coach that has a long-term plan, you're able to really, really enact it and develop it. Finally, as Lee kind of mentioned before, I'm going to be doing a UBC graduate program in high performance coaching and technical leadership. To get into that, you basically have to have a degree of coaching education and some higher level competitive results, but that's something I kind of found out last week, so I'm pretty excited about, and I'm looking forward to that. That'll start off in June. That's a little bit about my background. So a couple things that'll kind of give you an idea of where I'm coming from is the club I'm coming from, Riptides. It's a decent sized club. It's 300 to 500 swimmers, depending on how you use the numbers. And the head coach there, Scott, is a little more inclined to the sprint side of things and higher intensity sort of things. So that's what I came from developmentally. Then at UVic, it's very much endurance, aerobic, distance-oriented school. So that's kind of a flip side, right? I kind of had the intensity side developmentally and the aerobic endurance side as a senior athlete, which is kind of flipped from what I think you want, but this it's important for you to understand that. All right, so let's go into the summer club specifics. What makes summer club breaststroke and coaching breaststroke in summer club unique? We've got an awesome picture there from, I think it's a blue and white meet of, I guess Lee's not in there, but our other buddy, Steven, in the kind of trinity of the three of us, all dressed in blue. And Lee was also covered in blue paint, but I don't have that photo in the presentation. So summer club and coaching, and it has some unique challenges. There's limited time. You don't necessarily have 50 weeks out of the year to develop swimmers. You don't necessarily have 20 hours a week. Not that I even have that right now. I coach 6 times a week for 9 hours total. But there's not necessarily the amount of time to put into development, okay? Unfortunately, right? And that's on the season and training side. And for breaststroke, that really has the biggest impact on the kick, and things that are a little more naturally predisposed to be affected by talent or natural ability, because some kids are going to have different degrees of flexibility that are going to be conducive to doing breaststroke, like their feet just work the right way or their hips are in the right place. So developing breaststroke kick, you don't necessarily have the time to do that you might in year-round swimming or university swimming, where you can spend, like 20 weeks just developing that first cycle and kind of getting the basics down. You got 16 weeks, that's your season, time to make the best of it, right? Limited specific skill set. So it's kind of obvious that a lot of coaches, their first experience in coaching is summer club. And I know that that's what it was for me as well. And you're not going to have a whole bunch of coaching education behind you. You've got your experiences as a swimmer, which are very valuable, but you might not necessarily have been a breaststroke swimmer. And if you weren't a breaststroke swimmer, perhaps you didn't receive a lot of coaching on breaststroke. And if you're not as comfortable talking breaststroke, doing breaststroke, then you're actually going to be less likely to coach breaststroke. And that's one of those kind of self-biases that if you kind of think breaststroke is the meme stroke, and it's like, oh, I'm doing breaststroke, then that's a personal bias that you're going to have to confront, because you will have swimmers that will need your help in that area, and you've got to be able to give it to them just, for the best sake of their development. And plus, the benefits of having a strong grasp of breaststroke as a coach are really valuable, because listen, if you're going to drop 4 seconds in a 200 IM, it can be a lot easier to do it on breaststroke alone than the other 3 strokes, just by figuring out some really basic things. 50 and 100 breast, maybe you've got some kids that are 4th to 8th in the region sort of, and you think, hey, like they dropped 2 more seconds, they're going to be going to provincials, right? There could be a massive opportunity for swimmers there, even if it's not their best event. Maybe it's event number 4, they can still get in there, and it can be really valuable. Same thing with the 4x50 meter relay. If you have a pretty solid breaststroker, you could make up 2-3 seconds, and that's huge, versus someone that doesn't necessarily have a breaststroker. That team is at a competitive disadvantage. So you're in a good spot if you have a breaststroke skill set, and you confront maybe your lack of previous experience with it, and just come in with an open mind. So that's Summer Club breaststroke. I've also got 2 monitors here, so if you have any questions, just go ahead and throw them in the Huba chat, and I'll be sure to answer them and catch them as we kind of go along here. But yeah, so there's problems in the world and there's solutions, right? So I think in terms of kind of addressing that limited time component is you really got to encourage swimmers self-learning. They're not going to check out every YouTube video and try everything out right away. They kind of need to say, hey, I saw this happening. Like, what's up with that? Like the hands coming out of the water, things like that. It's important that you as the coach are kind of the person that makes sense of it to them, but you want to kind of develop that sense of ownership as an athlete, an interest in the sport, becoming a student of the sport. And it's a lot easier if you have 30 coaches in the water rather than just 1 to 2 coaches on the deck, right? So everyone's responsible for themselves. They're focused and self-motivated, and spending your time on things that are going to give you a good bang for your buck, so to speak, right? And yeah, so you're trying to learn as much as you can from good sources. I think that the fact that everyone's at a conference about swimming is excellent, right? I always had a lot of fun at the coaches conference playing octoball and going to all the talks. But yeah, you've got to be able to see an idea, try it out with your kids. If you like it, keep using it. If you don't like it or it didn't work, maybe try it a little bit more, try a different approach. But you're always trying to move forward as a coach and add things to your knowledge bank. Some things will work, some things you won't like, but you're trying to become more effective. And yeah, like you're just identifying kids that can do breaststroke, and they're not necessarily breaststrokers. I think breaststroke or breaststroker is kind of a negative term, because you have these kids that can only do breaststroke. You want kids that can do breaststroke, right? You don't necessarily have sprinters. You have kids who can sprint. Like Caleb Dressel, the best 50 freestyler in the world right now. Phenomenal, 200 IMer, 100 butterfly, can even swim 100 breaststroke, had the American record, right? So give kids the skill set, but don't necessarily specialize them, right? And yeah, looking for places to qualify. So we're going to talk a little bit about basic technique, and this is kind of oriented most towards the developmental level, but it really is applicable to everybody because it's sound fundamentals of the stroke that you can't really go wrong with. I've got some pictures and I'll kind of talk things through a little bit. All right, so basic breaststroke. If you can do the basic fundamentals of this stroke correctly, you're probably making finals at regionals, and with a little more coaching, maybe 2 weeks, you could make provincials, potentially. I've seen it happen so many times, right? You got to focus on the basic fundamentals of the stroke and doing it correctly, and we're going to talk about what those are. However, within that context, you can't always just say, we're going back to basics. We're going back to basics. It's day one, right? Next thing you know, you're in August and you're still working on streamline, right? It's got to be progressive. You start with this, You still always come back to the basics, and most of your time is spent on that, but you have to progress forward. You can't get stuck at square one. These are a couple of acronyms that Swimming Canada and coaching courses will have you use. BLABT and SCHLAR. BLABT is body position, legs, arms, breathing, timing. SCHLAR is streamline, head, legs, arms, rhythm. They're both the same thing. They're just ways of breaking down the strokes. And now that you've seen that, you'll kind of recognize it if someone says BLABT or SCHLAR. And yeah, just do the basics really well. So I've got some funny illustrations here, kind of illustrating body position, streamline, and head. So just like what Carl was talking about, there's really just a couple pieces to this whole swimming thing, right? You're trying to minimize drag, which is going to impact how much you slow down in the water. And you're going to try to maximize power or propulsion, right? And try to get some more speed where you can go get it, right? The ultimate goal with body position is going to be to reduce swimmer drag so that you can just slice through the water, right? Which will enable you to swim faster, and each stroke is going to take you further. It's awesome, right? And it just comes down to making the body as long as you can. You can see the difference between these two photos here is the top of this swimmer's head is going to be aligned with their body. So if you're looking at it from a frontal view, they look like a little pill capsule. They're tiny, right? Absolutely tiny. But if the head was up, which on this frame, the head is a little more up, there's going to be bubbles that get caught behind your head. There's going to be frontal drag that hits you in the face like this. The first thing you do when you see a kid is you just look to see where their head is at, not mentally, but on their breaststroke. And honestly, just getting them to put their head in this window. So many kids will have their eyes looking forward. They're trying to see down the pool, but you've got to consciously think of getting this in and then pushing your head in. Some studies have shown that it's better to actually be looking a little too low rather than to be looking even a little bit too high, right? So neutral and kind of in is best. This is pretty good, but looking straight up will kill you, right? You got to get the head down, exaggerate if needed, and that frontal drag is what hits you right here, and the trailing edge is going to be bubbles and stuff that come behind you when you're coming through the water. You want to minimize any bubbles or turbulences, okay? So as you can see on this diagram, this is very small frontal drag. Everything's just really nice and compact. That's how you minimize it, by just stretching everything out. And this guy's chin is a little bit below his body line. Maybe he wants to get it up, right? Just as an example, you're trying to see what it looks like from different angles. And like how Carl said of walking on the pool deck, you got to walk from the front. You've got to go to the side. You've got to look from the back, right? You've got to have a mental model of how they're cutting through the water or not cutting through the water. And just kind of some, compare and contrast here. Often swimmers, they might come up too high, which their body's like a teeter-totter. So this part sinks, right? Ideally, you want to keep everything fairly flat or add like a subtle undulating motion into it, right? Or they don't put their head under. As a result, their stroke's really short because they're not getting a full extension, right? They might be looking forward. And so some cues to really fix that is making sure that you've got long arms, right? Not short arms like this, but long arm, tight and almost locked. You don't want to pull with locked arms because you just can't grab like that, but you want to get used to squeezing up like this, right? It's a little better, like I said, to look a bit down rather than to look a little up. And you want to make sure that everything from your fingers to your toes are in a straight line. And if you're taking a photo from the front, you really can't see much of anything. It's really compact. So here you can see the legs are left below the body. This is kind of the level that you'd want to be at. All this hip stuff and leg stuff is below. You want to get everything into a really nice tight line. And what we'll talk about later is how you're actually allowed to do an upwards dolphin kick that'll sneakily get you and your legs up to the surface. But yeah, this is what it looks like. Everything's in a straight line. You're going to feel like you're swimming downhill because you're just cutting through the water so fast. You got your hips up, your back's flat, your legs hidden, your head's under the water. And even if you try to speed up, right, you try to pick up the stroke rate, your body doesn't go up and plow, right? You want to keep everything forward and you've got to respect the line. Adam Peaty, crazy stroke rate, respects the line. That's why he's so fast, okay? So some drills for that, breaststroke streamline. I always talk about this immediately when I grab some breaststroke kids. I don't ever want them to breaststroke streamline kick like this if they're on their front. I want them to go thumbs together or hands together, kind of like this. because if they go like this, they're going to do it in a race and they're going to pull unevenly. It just isn't good in my opinion. Once again, my thoughts. But yeah, breaststroke streamline and just making sure you got your head in the window, making sure that you're able to hold your body at the surface of the water. You're going to do that about 5 seconds before you go topsy-turvy the first time, but being able to hold yourself tight on the surface of the water. Minimum stroke counts. You're just going to learn how to hold that balance of long body position by keeping your stroke counts low. Head in the window, that's what I said about just going like this and putting your head in the right spot. If COVID cools down, you can just physically manipulate kids' heads into that.
We'll give him a second.
For breaststroke streamline, huge. Oh, leave it up.
You froze for a half second.
Okay. Did I melt? Good.
Yeah, you're good now.
Good. Okay. And then N kicks, 1 pull. Most commonly seen in 3 kicks, 1 pull. On that drill, you're doing 3 kicks and then 1 pull. You're setting up your upper body in the perfect streamline and delivering your kicks in a way that you're going to be able to ride out on that really effectively. Awesome body position drill. Let's move on to the legs. So kind of describing the kick here, the kick is most often what gets people. If someone's not an excellent breaststroker or hasn't figured it out yet, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the kick. The key thing is that you want to lift with the heels and not with the knees. It's similar to a butt kick, but you don't need to actually pull your feet to your butt. And competitively, people don't really do that anymore in the distances that are getting a lot faster. You might think that, okay, so if I bring my feet up to here, that's good. If I can bring them closer to my butt, that's better. But it's going to be the same as what we talk about in the arms, is if you pull too far back, you're just going to be producing extra drag, and the net effect on your stroke is negative. So you don't need to pull up to your butt, but more important is grabbing with the feet and pointing out like this. You want to think of kicking around the knee. So the knee is not going to come crazy out like this, the knees being, of course, my elbows. But you want to kick around the knees. It can be useful to go wider just to teach kids how to grab initially. But if you look at how breaststrokers actually do it nowadays, kind of in that bottom left photo, is the knees aren't super duper wide. There's a couple exceptions, but yeah, you want to be able to use the big muscles of your legs, your quads, to kick rather than really small muscles on the inside of your leg, which are going to be more prone to injury, and your groin and things like that. Teaching kind of that conventional like frog kick is useful initially, and then as they get the feel for the feet, which is just so important, then you can kind of get it tighter. But if you try to go too tight too soon, they might not have the mobility to grab with the feet. It doesn't really work. We're going to talk about some drills to do that next. So to teach the kick effectively, it's important to combine multiple types of feedback even simultaneously. You're trying to get them to feel something and understand what they're doing, right? This is classic for little kids. For kids that are going to be listeners, auditory, actually very few of these kids, but to reach them, you're going to be talking to them, explaining things while they're doing it, not at the end of the length. Just like what Carl's talking about, is the closer the feedback is to what they're doing, the more valuable it is, okay? And if you've got them out on the deck, you're doing something with mats, like you've got them on their belly and you're moving their feet, talking them through that as they're doing it is so much better than, okay, you did this, right? And kind of, you want to make it as close as possible. The visual side, just like Carl said, Carl's got all the answers, right? You got to do video with iPad, or what you can do, it's even a little different, is you can get them to hold their kickboard like this or low or something like that, and physically look down at their legs and try to see and figure out what they're doing once they have the understanding of what they want it to look like. Kinesthetic, so getting them to feel something, there's different things you can do. You can get them to walk like a duck. You can get them to just practice doing circles with their feet and pointing out. You can use resistance bands. Some kids honestly have like no muscle in that area, and they're not really able to pull the feet out effectively into what's called dorsiflexion. When you hear dorsi, think duck, right? Versus on flutter kick, you'd hear plantar flexion, which means point. So dorsi, duck, breaststroke, plantar, point, right? And you're trying to get them to feel that foot flex position, right? And you have to talk to them and get them to identify the issue. They need to be willing to change. Some kids, they're not really interested. You could burn 1,000 hours and it's not going to get better. Personally, personal opinion, I'm going to work with kids that are going to that are willing to learn and develop results in that way. And getting DQ'd isn't the end of the world. You know, sometimes some of those kids, it takes them getting DQ'd in a 50 breast or 100 IM or a 200 IM to say, "Ooh, I really got to fix this," right? It lights a fire a little bit. And yeah, everyone has their innate levels of flexibility, but you can get better. You've got to identify what the limiting issue is. Is it the ankle? Is it the hip? Is it just their legs or hamstrings? And correct that. And that can be done on their own time at home. So yeah, developing the kick, streamline kick in that breaststroke streamline, right, with thumbs locked, long arms. If you want to focus on bringing the heels up, then you can do it on your front and set up the heels behind your body, just like how the feet are a little higher than the body here. If you go breaststroke kick on your back, then that's also good for making sure your knees don't come up, because you can look down. If your knees are out of the water, they're up far too high, right? Same thing as before, doing the end kicks one pull. Resistance kick. So what I mean by this is using things like a kickboard that's held so you plow through the water, having things like parachutes or octopus, giving them something to push against. That's an example of kinesthetic feedback or feel feedback that they feel right away, right? And they say, do you feel that when you push with your legs? Really, really helpful just to throw that in for warm up before you're going to do like a fast breaststroke set to get them on their legs. Egg beater. Egg beater is basically single leg breaststroke kick. And I don't mean the synchro egg beater where the knees come out and all like this. I mean like a tight egg beater where it really is a single leg breaststroke kick. That kind of removes some of the mobility constraints and might teach them to grab with their foot without kind of worrying about those mobility constraints. And also kick count is how many kicks does it take you to get to the other side, right? If I feel good, it's about 8. If I'm really tired, it's about 12 to 15, depending on how awful it really is. And yeah, like the dry line flexibility to address this, it's lower body oriented, obviously, but it's going to concern your ankles, your glutes, your groin, which is that injury prevention piece, as well as your quads, those big muscles on the front of your legs, and your hips. It all kind of comes together to paint a picture of breaststroke mobility. All right, let's talk about the pull. Pull, way easier than the kick. You could teach the pull 10 times before one kid gets the kick. And the goals of the pull basically is to work in the best interest of the stroke. It's not to be super strong, Mr. Muscle Man. The goal of the pull is to make the stroke better, right? Some of the problems that you'd see with the pull is people trying to go up rather than trying to get themselves forward. That might be because they're trying to lift their body up or they're pushing down on the out sweep. That's basically not good because you want to spend your energy trying to go forward, right? Over pulling, that's when you see someone pulling back behind their shoulder line. You want to sweep in at the shoulder line so that you're able to keep going forward. Otherwise, the drag is greater than the power you create. Net negative effect on the stroke. You've got to slice in rather than back, and that's going to enable you to go forward. The shape of the pull is most like a heart, or you can think a butterfly. I always think of it as, you know, the classic, you go out and you get your ice cream, bring your ice cream to your mouth, go get more ice cream, or you can draw a heart and then break it if you're a little more inclined as to that piece. So a couple ways to think of the pull: the butterfly, right? The heart, breaking it, and yeah. There's a few different stages to the pull. There's the out sweep, the in sweep, and the recovery. And what I've got here is I got a couple infographics. Last year, when COVID happened, I started an Instagram page called Breaststroke Secrets that has like 2,400 followers. And I started it completely fresh last year because I wanted something to do. And I wanted to put together some visual pieces that would be helpful for people and kind of help them keep learning about swimming. The goal of the out sweep, the first stage, is to get a hold in the water and set up the in sweep. And when I think out sweep, I've got my pinkies up because I'm fancy, right? Some people are going to be a little flatter, but you should aim to have your pinkies mostly up, and you're going out to set up. Probably to about a Y position. If you're at a T, then your hands are too far back. You're not going to be able to sweep in effectively. You kind of run out of water, so to speak. And little kids, everyone knows they love to just like do the biggest pulls in the world. You've got to get them to keep it at about a Y and in front of their shoulders, okay? You're going to get a hold on the water with those pinkies, and then a pretty quick catch and turning the corner. So you've got a hold on the water here, and now it's time to use it, right? The in sweep is a fast, explosive piece where you're going to transfer immediately into the recovery, which the recovery in every stroke is when your arm gets a rest, so to speak. That's why it's called the recovery. And you're transferring back into the propulsive parts of the stroke, okay? So you're getting a hole in the water with the out sweep, you're sweeping explosively in with the in sweep straight into the recovery, right? And the most common mistake that I see is kind of having a pause between the in sweep and the recovery, most often due to breathing. They're going, oh, then you go, oh, things like that, right? And the key on that is going to be blowing your bubbles out in your out sweep. So as soon as you in sweep, you get the air in right away, and you can get back to the money-making parts of the stroke. When I'm swimming breaststroke, previously I was sweeping in to my chest here, and that was kind of my go point. Now I think you want to have it a bit in front of your chest, just kind of that drag management. If you're looking for a target, look down yourself and just a bit in front of your sternum here. If you're out at like a Y position, and then you're pulling in here, both your hands to there, that's about where you want to be. It might even look like a triangle in front of your chest, like this, but you're going to sweep out from a Y into that triangle piece right here. If you try to pull too far back, you just create too much drag. So that's what I would say. Recommended drills for breaststroke pull. It's all about developing the feel for the water, and you can develop feel on any stroke, but here's how you do it on breaststroke. You can do sculling, a bunch of different types of sculling. You can go front scull, you can go feet first scull, right, where you're kind of like this. You can sit on a kickboard and do scull. My kids like that, probably because it's really slow and easy. Your arms will burn, but you know, you're sitting on a kickboard, yada, yada, yada. And what's called spot sculling. So what spot sculling is if you have a piece of your stroke that you know is not very on, you can practice sculling that really specific area. Like if my catch isn't very good, I'm not going to waste all this time doing this. I'm going to hone specifically on that first bit and using my pinkies to get into that first bit of the out sweep, right? If I'm trying to connect the out sweep to the in sweep and I'm missing water there, I will scull directly at that point, right? I'm not going to waste my time doing all the stuff I know how to do. I'm going to spot scull those really specific areas. Underwater pull, so that's like actual underwater breaststroke rather than doing like underwater pullouts. We're talking like this here. It just surrounds you with water and it makes you hyper aware of kind of all these other surfaces and gets you to grab out and pull in a little more effectively. That's what I think. Then you can combine that and make it real with 2 under, 2 over. So you do 2 strokes underwater, like 1, 2, and then you pop up for 2 strokes and you try to keep the same grip on the water that you had on that. Breaststroke pull, this is something that's a little more senior oriented. I don't do a whole lot of breaststroke pull. I coach 2 groups right now. I coach a group of 11, 12 swimmers that actually have like, between all of them, probably like 12 provincial cuts in breaststroke. And then I coach a younger group of, let's say 10, 11, some 12-year-olds that are kind of in between level on breaststroke. And I definitely do breaststroke pull with that 11, 12 group, but that's because they're a little more inclined to it. I wouldn't necessarily do it for most age groups, but there's a lot of ways you can do pull. You can do a pull buoy high, like just kind of up against your suit. You can do pull buoy low, which is down by your calves. That's tough the first couple times because you got to squeeze your muscles and keep your body long. You can do band only, which is where you have an ankle band around your ankles. And it just gives you different challenges in how to move through the water, right? The flip version of N kick, 1 pull is N pull, 1 kick. So you keep your legs up behind your body and you go 1, 2, 3, then you kick with your backside, right? It lets you really hone in on the arms and develop that skill set. Paddles. And what I mean with offset here is paddles often you can, they've got the little strap that you put your finger through. What happens if you put a different finger through, like your ring finger or your index finger? Suddenly, that makes you really aware of your angles of your hand, and it really changes everything. So I would highly recommend, if you have paddles with straps, put different fingers in and see what happens. Personally, I like having it on my index finger because that makes a little more material here and you're aware of your pinkies. But if I flip it and put it on the ring finger, I feel really strong and I get a bit better leverage. Just some ways to think about your hands, right? Fist swimming, so you can swim with your fist like you're very angry. And what that will do is by taking away all this stuff, it increases the awareness of your forearm. So if you have kids that don't really figure out how to catch on breaststroke, you can do fist stuff. And then when they have their fingers back, they have a higher degree of awareness here and they're able to actually grab water, right? And just any focus or any work with focus on arms, that's breaststroke pull. Breathing, rhythm, and timing. Breathing's underrated in breaststroke. It drives the rhythm of the stroke, and it's a choice. It's something you do rather than just kind of breathing automatically. Like I mentioned before, you must breathe out on the way out with the arms and in on the way in. So it's then back down. And that might be something you've never thought of before. I know it's something I didn't think of until like second or third year university, which is crazy because I'm a breaststroker, right? You're always moving. Your body's either coming up or going down. You're not getting stuck in like, hey guys, right? You're going up or down right away. Same thing with butterfly. You don't want to get stuck up here. You're either going up or back down, okay? You want to get your arms and legs up at the same time, arms up, legs up. So you're sweeping, you're up like this, and your legs are up like that. Then you're going to be able to shoot faster and deliver that kick mostly in streamline. By the time you hit like the really meaty part of your kick, you're going to be in streamline. It's okay to get through the first part of your kick while you're still trying to get there, because the meat of it, the important part, will happen when you're in streamline. It's super common to see kids like try to get length by going pull, wait, and then kick. You're always going to try to think of getting your legs up earlier, and legs up, arms up is kind of a good cue for that, right? And the timing of the stroke, you're going to have a slow out sweep, fast in sweep, and it's going to be, the glide is going to determine how fast your stroke rate is. If you're taking, 1 stroke per second, which is pretty fast, 60 stroke rate, you're going to have a very short glide, versus if you're half that, 1 stroke, 2 seconds, you're going to have a decently fast stroke, but the glide is going to be what makes the difference. You're not going to throw out your timing because of that. Some drills for that: flutter breast and dolphin breast, so breaststroke with different kicks. You can also put fins on for that because it just gives you more consistent speed, versus in breaststroke it's kind of a phase thing where you got the kick every once in a while. Flutter kick is going to force you to keep moving forward, otherwise you just hit a wall, and the fins will amplify that. You can see in both these photos that this guy's shooting forward really well. He's getting his whole back and butt dry. He's doing a flutter breast drill and getting his whole body into that alignment and shooting forward. Those timing drills of setting up the legs and setting up the arms by doing the different kick and pull counts, that's good. Single arm and single leg breaststroke are a little tricky. If you're feeling really sneaky, you could do like 1 arm and 1 leg. That's really hard, but I wouldn't advise that for most swimmers. It's a little too ridiculous. This one, however, the IY sweep, you're going to stay in an I, like YMCA. It's going to be an I for 1 1,000, 2 1,000. Then you go up to a Y with your pinkies up, like an out sweep, 1 1,000, 2 1,000, and then you're going to sweep back into your stroke. So 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 1 1,000, 2 1,000, boom. So just making sure that all of that in sweep and recovery is fast, okay? And just making sure you're swimming at a variety of stroke rates of kind of building things from that lower stroke rate where it's easier to do things and speeding it up till eventually it's like max speed. That's basic technique. I don't see anything in the chat, but totally feel free to just drop anything in there and I'll hit it. I'm trying to go a little bit fast because there's a little bit of a late start, but I want to have time for questions at the end too. All right, so that's the basic breaststroke. It doesn't sound super basic, but those are some of the ideas that for every swimmer, you really can't go wrong with. Things like solid body line, setting up the kick well, feeling the pull, and then using some of those cues to develop rhythm that you may not have thought of. Those are generally pretty good ideas. And one of the things about breaststroke is that it's very much evolving. If you look at people in 2008 versus 2012 versus 2016, there's some fairly massive differences in the stroke. And I don't just mean in terms of the stroke rate getting so much faster with Adam Peaty and Lily King and swimmers like that, but there's some really subtle things, especially in short course, that will make their way to long course eventually. But yeah, people are really experimenting with things these days, and it's important to stay on top of it. Otherwise, you're coaching like you were, 50, 60 years ago, and swimming's gotten a lot faster than then. So this is kind of a sneaky tip for body position and legs, advanced technique, is using the hips rather than just having this flat. And all you breaststrokers that are like, divs 5, div 6, div 7, and want to go really fast, this is worth learning. Using the hips. So your body position in breaststroke isn't like flat all the time. You're going to be using your hips to set yourself up in both create power and lower drag. And the way that that works is it's going to feel like you're pulling up your pants without using your hands. So imagine you've got a pair of jeans on that's like a couple sizes too big, and I don't know, you're holding coffee or something, but you don't want your pants to fall down. That's kind of what it feels like, right? You're going to bring your belly button to your spine, and you're trying to keep your core tight, pulling your hips and carry them with you. So when you're pulling into your in sweep here, you're going to be bringing your belly button into your spine and bringing your hips up to the surface. And then once you shoot and kick, you've got to keep it tight so you carry them with you and get your back dry. That's going to help you set up the kick, because if your hips are in like this, you're going to kick behind your body and deliver it. And then if you keep it over the water, you're not going to drag. So that's kind of sneaky tip number one. Then we've got to use the head. You want to keep your head down longer than you think. There's this amazing podcast series called Inside with Brett Hawk. I would absolutely recommend it to everybody if you haven't checked it out. But there's one swimmer named Eric Shanto, who is the US's breaststroke guy for quite a while. And when he went to his coach, Eddie Reese, Eddie made a couple changes to his breaststroke, and he said, you need to keep your head down so long that you think this has been way too long, and the last second, you pick it up with your neck rather than your whole body. Pick it up as you go into the in sweep. Okay, and getting the mobility through your neck rather than your back. If you lift up too early, some coaches think you're leading the stroke that way. I would disagree and say that you're way more likely to be sinking your hips and kind of getting into an undesirable body position. If you keep the head down until just before you turn in, then you're going to be able to pick up, keep that body position, but still get the benefit of a full pull by having that chest open. Worth noting that some kids will be fairly close to DQ on the first stroke, because the rule is that you have to have your head break the surface before your hands turn in. So kind of be mindful of that. It's just before is when you're going to pick up into that first stroke. And also, I kind of mentioned this earlier in the talk, is using the up kick. So the up kick in breaststroke is basically you're allowed to do an upwards dolphin after you finish the breaststroke kick. And you can even break the surface of the water. It can be very propulsive, right? But you're not allowed to propulsively kick down. So this is good, but doing this is illegal. You'll get DQ'd, okay? And using that up kick is a way for kids with more of those dolphin inclined sensibilities to use them as an advantage. And it's also a way that's going to force you to kick down to get your hips up, and then you use the dolphin up and your hips normalize, right? So kick back to get your hips up, and then pick your legs up so that they're in that nice line. And yeah, this is the hips up, and just seeing that back is, yeah, away from the water. He's still got to get his head down to the end of the stroke, but yeah. Talk about the arms. If you want to increase how long your strokes are, go a little wider on the out sweep, but maintain your in sweep speed, right? You're going to grab a little bit more water, and you're going to use it just as fast. Your stroke length is going to go up. You want to increase your stroke rate, which is another way to get faster. You've got to maintain the rhythm of the stroke, but you've got to execute your core movements quicker, right? You've got to have some athleticism, some motor skills to be able to go out and shoot, right? If you haven't got it yet, your stroke rate is going to be limited by your athleticism, okay? So if you want to hit a faster stroke rate, which will allow you to swim faster, assuming your length doesn't drop like crazy, then yeah, you have to practice some speed stuff. This one's kind of sneaky. It's the arm recovery, but there's multiple stages to it. And I know there's national center coaches that'll say, hey, you got to be sweeping into palms down, and it helps you create a surface and all this stuff. But if you look at the top swimmers in the world and really what they're doing, there's a multi-stage effort here with some explanation to it. They're sweeping in really tight like this for a couple reasons. Because one, if you don't sweep in all the way, you're going to plow with these super wide elbows, which is undesirable, frontal drag, okay? So you want to finish your stroke in, and it just so happens that if you're rotating like this, it's like on freestyle. When you finish your stroke like that, you end up palms up. Same thing on breaststroke. Tight elbows, finish your stroke, right? Then, if you're able to slice through the water, you're transitioning from here into that palms down, but the natural midpoint is kind of coming through with those fingers in that prayer position, right? So you're using the palms up to finish your stroke, okay? And you're cutting through forward as you try to go palms down, which will allow you, if you throw paddles on and you try to go like this, you're gonna get some good body position and surf forward on your stroke, okay? So finish your stroke palms up, shoot forward in that prayer as you go to palms down. That'll help you balance out and make your stroke longer. Let's talk about race strategy. So 50 breast, your dive, your pull out, if you're doing a 50 breast versus 100 breast, I've included both because, you know, us big kids love to do relays. It's going to be a little quicker than the 100 off the dive and the pull out, but it's not crazy quick. It's only like a couple tenths, so it's a little more aggressive on the way out. Your stroke rate is going to be about 1 stroke per second, right? And like I said before, the better your coordination, the better your stroke rate. Guys like Adam Peaty are well into the 60 stroke rates, like 68. There's this girl named Benedetta Pilato that I believe is 15 now. That's like one of the fastest breaststrokers of all time, and she's a little girl practically. And her stroke rate's in the 70s because she's just so coordinated and athletic, and she's a beast. Okay. So if you have a tempo trainer, a Finnish little yellow thing that beeps in your head, or you can even get your coach to just pull out a metronome on an iPad and try to get you that strokes per minute or that 1 stroke per beep, pretty quick. And 50 breaststrokes, sneakily, it's the shortest 50 because 10 of those seconds are actually going to be underwater. So if you're 30 seconds for your 50 breaststroke, you're really only swimming like 20 seconds. So get up and go on it and swim really fast, right? If you're looking to plan a race on this, there's about 2.5 seconds between 25s. Or for a relay, if you're trying to plan it, there's 3 seconds between 25s for a relay because of the takeover. If you're doing like dive stuff where you're getting times and it's lots of rest, you want to aim for that first 25 split. That goes from a takeover or from a dive. You're trying to hit that first 25 split. And if you're trying to do something where you're maybe a little bit tired, but you're trying to hit a fast time, you're going to try to hit your second 25 minus like a 1.5 seconds for the turn. But what that basically comes down to is you're trying to hit your 50 time cut in half from a push when you're tired. And that will kind of ensure that you're able to hit it, you know, and you've got to practice going to a foot touch. So coming in and finishing and jamming your feet to the wall and coming from the foot touch. So take your marks, go. So you're getting used to it. Lee's just giving me the 2-minute warning. So that's perfect. You got to know your stroke and execute it. Okay. 100 breast stroke rate slowly goes up through the race. You're going to start at like 80% and finish at 90%. And this is evidence-based based on just tons of swimmers and just a bunch of data munching with my computer science background. Easy rule is you want to have 4 seconds between your 50s, right? And you can break that down a little bit more, but essentially the last 50, the last 2 25s are kind of an even split. The first one's going to be faster, just like the 50, right? And you want to practice increasing your stroke rate while maintaining technique. Write that down. Increase in rate, but keep technique. Because if your technique goes, everything goes, right? You have nothing, okay? You've got to get comfortable pushing 100 pace in a bunch of environments. It could be 25s on like relatively short rest. You could even push a 50 when you're not 100% fresh and do 100 pace on that. And you've got to be comfortable doing that. Younger kids, you're never going to do 50s at 100 pace. You're only going to do the occasional 25s with them because you're not going to do all this high intensity training. But yeah, it's important to have a grip on that. And you got to practice keeping your stroke count up only like 1 stroke higher than your long work. Like if you're doing super long stuff or steady 50s, only let your stroke count go up a little bit, right? My favorite set, I like to go in the 15-meter pool and I like to do 75s fast. So it's really a 45, bang, bang, bang. You just feel really, really quick. You get 3 pullouts in it. And sometimes I'll even do 2 75s on like 10 rests. It's like a broken 100, but it's really, really fast. That's my favorite 100 breaststroke set. How's that for the 2-minute warning, Lee? Late start.
Yeah, that was good. You really cranked through it. That was a lot of information. I don't.
The slides are already up, by the way.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't think we have time for questions necessarily. So if you do have anything you want to ask Baylee about Breaststroke, he is a expert. You can look for him in the bio. He's got all these wonderful things. Follow him at Breaststroke Secrets too. Probably the best breaststroke Instagram in the whole world. Lots of good info. So get in touch with him if you have any questions. And
just really quick, feel free to DM me on Breaststroke Secrets or Baylee, my personal, or email me. And yeah, the link in bio is in the Breaststroke Secrets bio. There's a book on breaststroke. There's a race planner with like a program I wrote that your swimmers are free to use, as well as a future time predictor, which is a little bit of some sneaky statistics. So yeah.
You're such a nerd and I love it. So thank you so much for coming. That's all we have for Breaststroke today. Please reach out to Baylee if you have any more questions. We got to end this call. The finance committee or the finance 101 for a club is happening right now. We're about to start. Then we have, for all of us coaches that aren't going to finance, you should come and watch the BCSSA database presentation, of which is me, and I built it. And
you worked hard on that. He deserves it.
I did. It's a basic overview of how to actually use the database to your advantage as a coach. So how to actually analyze some of the data. So please come to that. And with that in mind, I'm going to hang up. Thank you all for coming to this, and I'll see you in half an hour. Thanks, Baylee.